SAP mentor and enterprise mobility analyst, I want to thank you for joining me today for these video comments. In this session of my comments, I'm going to talk about data and the rapid increase in the amount of data due to a number of things, but specifically enterprise mobile devices, tablets, laptops, and what's projected to be 50 billion M2M or wireless embedded devices that will be coming your way by 2025. What do I mean by embedded wireless devices? Where you have machines sharing data with you. It can be your in-vehicle entertainment system, GPS, your ebook reader like Kindle, Nook, or your iPad. It can be your tennis shoes that report the distance you've run. It can be your watch, your smartphone. It can be your smart appliances in your house that tell you where you can program them remotely, when to come on and when to go off, and when is most optimally and energy efficient for the operation of that particular tool. I was sitting in the bleachers of the Boise State Broncos football team last year, and I was watching the beginning of a very exciting football game, when it occurred to me that something catastrophic was happening, or not happening in this case. I had forgot to record the game at home. See, it's not good enough to actually sit at the game live. You need to be able to race home after the game and watch it again on big screen. And I had forgot that vital element, which was scheduling that. But just so happened that I have DirecTV, and I was able to turn on my iPhone, open up my DirecTV iPhone application, schedule my box at home, my DVR at home, and record the game in its entirety, and it was successful. I saved the day from what could have been a very catastrophic event. All because I could control a machine in the cabinet at my house from about 10 miles away using my iPhone. You can imagine all these devices, 50 billion, will have embedded wireless chips projected by 2025. Now let's step back as a manager of a global or a multinational company that's huge, 80,000 worldwide employees, all kinds of regions, warehouses, locations, sales force, and your job is to effectively manage data. Starts to get scary. And when it used to be that when somebody left the building decades ago, it was almost like the Pony Express. You would send them out, and 11 days later, they would return. That's not how it is today. You're getting data constantly bombarding you. You know, I like to think about, well, here's an analogy I often use in my workshops. If you think about the original cockpit of an airplane when the Wright brothers were sitting in it, what kind of data were they getting? Really, it's the force of gravity, the wind in their face. They would lean to a side and pull up and down on a wooden pole or a pole on a strut to control the plane. Fast forward ahead a few years to World War I, when you started getting more and more sophisticated biplanes and the first bombers. You started having 8, 9, 10 kinds of gauges, and that was the data you were getting. Fast forward 30 years now into World War II, where you started having very large bombers. The Super Fortress, you have P-51 Mustangs, you have Messerschmitts, you have Spitfires, you have P-40Es. And all of these started to get very sophisticated cockpits. The data was coming at you in increasing numbers. Then fast forward to today, and you take a look at those 747 cockpits, where it takes 3, 4, 5 people just to watch all the data coming in. I look at that and say, that's kind of like the data that's coming in from wireless devices and mobile workforces today. How do you manage that? In real time even. You can't just collect it, archive it, review it next year or next quarter. This is information that can help you run your business correctly right now. I was reading Aberdeen's new report. What is it called here? Aberdeen's report, Mobility in ERP 2011, came out in May, was written by Kevin Prouty and Nick Castellina. Very interesting. I would recommend it to all of you, that particular report. And it calls out the point that when things go bad, the early adopters or the best-in-class companies have the business intelligence systems and have the integration and unified views of their data where they can not only be notified immediately when there's an exception or something's in jeopardy or there's a problem, but they have access to the information that they need to review so they can fix the problem very quickly. And that was one of the best or biggest differences between best in class and the distant laggard categories is access to immediate information and the right information so things can be fixed very rapidly. If you think back to the difference in how we manage companies over really just the last couple decades, when we went from paper processes oftentimes, where everybody was focused on let's try to standardize on processes, on forms, let's try to normalize our data, let's validate our data, let's make sure our data is accurate. And of course, I know many of us still have those challenges out there today. But think about it in a paper. When a form would come in or an invoice would come in, it would be processed, copied a dozen times, filed in a dozen different file cabinets, and nobody would look back on it unless there was a dispute or an exception. That data was not harvested for analytics. It was still held hostage on a piece of paper. Until recently, when we were able to extract that information through scanning technology, digitize it, and put it into systems that we could review and analyze. But even then, it was mostly on a monthly or quarterly basis. Today, businesses are cranking up the speed of things, where the real-time enterprise is the vision that we're often sharing today. So things have changed, but I wonder how many of us have still not changed our business processes, even though we now have the technology and the data that enables us to manage the real-time enterprise. So it's not only the volume of data coming in and trying to figure out how to analyze it so that you can effectively manage based upon real information. It's also the fact that you can visualize information in so many different ways. Do you know, I read a fascinating book I would highly recommend to any of you that love a good read and a good mystery, if you would, as well. It's a true story. It was called Ghost Maps. You can get it on just about any bookstore and Amazon.com. Ghost Maps is the story of a cholera outbreak in London, and how for the very first time two individuals collaborated together, Dr. John Snow, a local medical doctor in London, and a local priest, Henry Whitehouse, how they got together and worked to map out the origins of cholera, the spread of cholera, and then to visualize that by placing it on a map. Not just circling where people got sick and died on the map, but putting it in chronological order as well. So you could flip the pages back through time and find that ground zero, that first outbreak of cholera. By putting data on maps, enable people to visualize the disease in a way that had never been done before, and allow them to finally determine how cholera is spread and what are the common sources and carriers of cholera that again spread that disease throughout a community. And it was because of visualizing the data that they were able to have these breakthrough insights out there. Do you know the military is spending an enormous amount of time right now trying to help their soldiers and their combat personnel and their officers to be able to better understand how to make the best decisions possible in the chaos and fog of war. Now, we have a lot to learn from the military in this regard, because you can imagine the level of distraction, stress, and chaos in a battle. And your need as an officer and a commander, which can translate into a manager, of course, in the commercial sector, how you can process all the data, how you can thrive in a real-time environment and come out on top. We'll talk more about that later. I want to thank you today for joining me for these video comments.